Welcome to Craft Chat Chronicles, the go-to podcast for tips on crafting best-selling fiction. Here at Craft Chat Chronicles, we bring you expert interviews, insights, and tips on writing, publishing, and marketing. Join the conversation and embark on a new chapter in your writing journey. For workshops, show notes, and more information, visit j.d.myall.com. That's j.d.myall.com.
In Season 3, Episode 1 of Craft Chat Chronicles, best-selling author Kwame Alexander stops by to discuss winning the Newbery Award, winning his Emmy Award, and his writing career as a whole. He offers advice for new authors and discusses so much more. It's a great chat. I'm excited that you get to hear it. Again, that's Season 3, Episode 1 of Craft Chat Chronicles. Let's get chatty. Hello. How are you today? Can you hear me?
Hey, how you doing? Sorry about that.
Doing
My
well.
apologies.
Oh, you're fine. Can you tell me a little bit about your publishing journey?
Like specifically, what you mean?
How'd you get started? When did you know you wanted to be a professional writer?
I went to college to study pre-med, majored in biochemistry. Sophomore year, I took a class called organic chemistry. I said, I don't know if I'm gonna do this. Nikki Giovanni became a professor at my college, Virginia Tech. I said, let me take a poetry class. I took advanced poetry. I'd written some pretty ridiculous poems over the years, and I thought I felt like they were good, and that qualified me enough to take an advanced poetry class with Nikki Giovanni. And ended up taking 3 classes with her over the next 3 years, and just really got to see her life as a poet, as a working writer, and thought, wow, that's interesting. And she's been able to achieve a lot. Maybe that's something I can do. Both my parents were writers, but again, I had gone to college to get as far away from writing as possible because books were such a big part of my childhood. So after taking her classes and sort of becoming immersed in poetry, decided I think that's the career I want to have. So graduated from college and could not get my poems published. So decided to start my own company and publish my own book. And that was 1994. And over the next 10 to 12 years, I published about 12 of my own books and wasn't really making any money. Had a quite a few jobs, maybe about a dozen jobs, working 9 to 5 and writing on breaks. It was my passion. It was something I knew I wanted to do. I just hadn't figured out how to make a living from it. And then 2015, 2014, a book I had started writing in 2008 got published. My first book that was published that I didn't publish. And it went on to, win this award called the Newbery Medal, which changed my sort of writerly life and allowed me to finally, after 25 years, to be able to like make a living as a writer, make a good living as a writer. So 2015 was like the changing point. That was the moment where it all sort of came together, and all this work I've been putting into my writing, into my passion, it paid off. And that was book number 15. And book number 41 came out 3 weeks ago.
So I have a question. How did you go from self-publishing to traditional? Was it a choice? Like, did you query, or did they see
So
your work you're putting out come for you?
yeah, I had been trying to get published traditionally, but no one was interested. And so I just kept self-publishing myself, and I self-published 13 of my own books. And one day, back in 2008, I was at a book convention called Book Expo of America. at Jacob Javits in New York City. And I had sort of given up on trying to get published. And this woman who worked for a major publisher who I knew I had met at a reception or a party that someone had taken me to, an industry reception or party. This woman, her name was Andrea Pinkney, and she worked for Scholastic. And she said, you know, you should really consider writing a book, a novel. And because she knew I wrote poetry, and she said she was a big fan of my poems, you should consider writing a novel in poems. So she came and gave me this idea, and I said, well, will you publish it? And she was like, well, if it's good, I'll consider it. So that was 2008. And over the course of the next 5 years, she rejected it, and quite a few other publishers rejected it. And finally, in 2013, Houghton Mifflin said that they wanted to publish the book. So it wasn't a plan at that point, and I sort of backed into it. But once it seemed like it was an option, I tried everything I could to actualize it, and it took 5 years.
And how did you get your agent at the time? Did you query?
So, nah, I didn't. Having been in the industry, started my own company, I knew a lot of people. And
Okay.
so I met quite a few agents, and there was one agent who was a friend of my family's. And so just in sort of casual conversation, I was like, well, look, Scholastic is interested in this book. Would you consider representing me? And she said yes. And then a couple years later, after several rejections, and we parted ways. And then I got another agent on a referral from a friend. And that agent didn't do anything, was just terrible. In fact, that agent had told me that it was one of the biggest agencies in New York, and he had told me that no one was interested in my novel in poems, but he never told me why. And so finally, I remember one day I went up to New York to meet with him, and I said, "What were some of the reasons you got for the rejections?" And he said, "Actually, Kwame, I never submitted the book." Yeah, that's what my mouth did too.
That's terrible.
And so I fired him, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was my second agent. And so then I started um, querying. I queried 6 agents. I did some research and decided who might be a good fit for me. And met this agent who we had dinner at an Italian restaurant on West 57th Street. And I never forget it. I told her, I got to sell this novel. It's called The Crossover. And so if you're down, because we really hit it off. I said, if you can do that, we'll make it happen. And within 6 months, she had sold it, and we became really good friends.
Who is she?
Her name was Deborah Warren, East West Literary Agency. And so we became good friends, and we were tight. And then we had a disagreement about 4 or 5 years later, after I won the Newbery Medal. And it wasn't a disagreement. We didn't agree on a fundamental sort of aspect of my career, as it were. And there was no way I could see moving forward if we didn't have that fundamental agreement. And so we parted ways. And of course, in the industry, they tell you, don't fire your agent. Don't be known as like difficult. And here I was about to be on my 4th agent. And so at that point, I was like, okay, I don't even know if I want an agent now. But there was someone that I knew pretty well, and we got along, and we liked each other, and she was smart. And I said, well, and so I met with her, and I was about to sign with her. And then I was speaking at a conference in Springfield, Massachusetts. And this woman came up to me. She's about 4 feet tall. And I saw her name tag, and her name tag said Ariel X. And I recognized it. I was like, I know you. You're an agent. And she was like, nah, I retired like 10 years ago. It's like, whoa, what have you been doing? And she sort of broke down what she'd been doing and how she was like done with the industry. And I said, oh, well, if you ever decide you're looking for another client, let me know. And she said, yeah, I will, but no. And then maybe the next day she emailed me and she said, wait a minute, Kwame, were you talking about you? And because I had just given this like rousing speech and got a standing ovation to all these, talking about my writerly journal, this thing you and I are talking about, all the rejections and how I never let the nose define who I was. And so she emailed me, she's like, Kwame, were you talking about you or somebody else? I said, no, I was talking about me. And she said, yeah, I'll represent you. I'll come out of retirement. And
That's awesome.
that was 2015. And we were together for 10 years. And we're now business partners.
That's
So
beautiful.
yeah, so it all, it all worked out. This journey's been incredible and a lot of woes and a lot of wonder.
How did you find out you were getting the Newbery Medal?
7:16 a.m., February 2nd, 2015. I was asleep. The phone rang. It said no caller ID. It woke me up. I answered it, and the caller said, my name is Randall Enos. I'm calling from the Newbery Committee. And I just freaked out. I was like, what? And he said, I'm calling to tell you that you've won the Newbery Medal. And I could have sworn, I said, did you say Newbery Honor? Because the Newbery has like a medal, and then they got like second, third, fourth place, an honor. I was like, did you mean honor? He's like, no, you won the medal. And then it was just, it was pretty incredible. And so that moment, that day, that second, that call just changed everything. And I tell people all the time, I'm a 25-year overnight success.
What do you think you did right that helped you become who you are today?
I am the greatest, not because I'm better than anyone else, but because no one is better than me. I never doubted who I was. I never doubted my capacity, my capability. I never doubted my talent. I never doubted my craft. I always put in the work. I always tried to be kind. Um, and I felt whenever I was out and about and engaging, interacting, I was always on. I always knew that when I walked into a room, I needed to act like I belonged to be in the room, and I needed to be the man in the room. Like you need to know Kwame is here. Not again, not in an arrogant way, but in a confident way. I feel like people want to work with people they like, that they dig, that they get along with, and so you know, um, that's always been important to me. And I've always tried to surround myself with people who are kind, who are as smart or smarter than me. Um, that's the people I surround myself with has been so crucial and so important. I think those are some of the things I've got right.
Your talent is undeniable. My kids love the
Thank you.
crossover.
Oh,
Um,
thank you, thank you.
and my son, I have an autistic son. He doesn't like reading, but he loves
Uh-huh.
that book. He listens to it on audiobook and he likes the rhythm of the poetry and stuff. And he likes that it's about sports.
That's what's
So,
up.
yeah, definitely
How,
talented.
how old is he?
Did you always know that? Or was that something you came to know? Like during the rejections and the no's, did you still know that I have the talent? They're just not ready for me?
Oh yeah, I always knew it. Even when my stuff was whack. Even when I was taking advanced poetry and getting C's, like I thought, what is wrong? What is wrong with her? Why is she giving me these grades? Like I always thought I was all that, even when I wasn't. And so it just took me a minute to sort of catch up for my sort of talent to match my ambition. But no, I never lacked confidence from an early age. I think my parents did a really great job of instilling that in me.
How did you get your own imprint?
Well, again, those first 14 years or so, I had started my own company. And my father owned a publishing company. So I had worked for him as a kid. So I knew publishing. And so um, I think I pitched the idea to my editor one day. I said, look, I feel like I have some innovative and new and interesting ways to approach publishing children's books. I think I should have my own imprint. And they went for it. I think again, I'm a hard worker and I have my finger on the pulse, and I have a vision. I have a vision for my career, and I think I felt like I had something to offer to other writers so that they didn't have to go through that sort of 25-year cycle that I went through, that I could sort of speed it up for them, you know? And I felt like I could be efficient and effective at doing that. And I think my publisher believed that. So they went for it.
It's awesome. Can you tell me how Black Star came to be and what was your inspiration for it?
Yeah, I was living in London during COVID, and one day I had gotten a letter in the mail from a fan. I don't know how this fan got my address in London, but the fifth grader in Santa Monica who wrote me a letter saying how much she loved my books, and that as much as she loved my books, there was one problem. I had never featured a female main character in any of my novels, and she felt like it was time for me to do that. So she just went in on me, and I was like, "That's interesting." So I actually flew to LAX and went to visit her class in Santa Monica, and I remember they were so excited. I surprised them, and after all the thrill and excitement died down, she looked at me and she was like, "So what are you going to do about my question?" And that always sort of stuck with me. And I think when I began writing the Door of No Return series, book one came out in 2022. As I thought about what book two would be about, I went back to that letter and said, well, whatever it's going to be a female main character. And so that became exciting for me. And then it was a matter of figuring out what's the metaphor, what's the sports metaphor, because in a lot of my books, I try to use sports as a metaphor. And so I came up with this idea that perhaps this girl, this 12-year-old girl, plays baseball and has a really strong arm. And of course that began to create some conflict and some tension because some of the boys in the neighborhood are probably a little jealous and a little bit upset that she can strike them out. So that's sort of some natural tension that can happen. So that was sort of the beginnings of it, and then I began to think about my family, my grandmother, my grandfather, my aunts and uncles, and how what life might have been like for them to grow up in the early 1900s. And so as I began to think about all those things, then it was just a matter of tying it into the story in book one and making it sort of cohesive. And then I wrote it.
That's awesome. How many revisions did it take?
Door No Return was 12 years and a bunch of revisions. Black Star was a year and a half and probably about 3 or 4 revisions. But I also, you know, my writing process is I revise while I'm writing. Like I'm telling stories in poems. And so I will work on a poem, I'll get a draft out in an hour, beginning to middle and end. But then I'm going back and I'm fixing stuff and I don't like that word. And so there's a lot of revisioning happening in each draft. But I revisited the book probably 3 times as a whole.
Love that. Love that. How do you balance your writing with like Big C Entertainment and Versify and all of your other projects and your speaking engagements and all that stuff?
Well, I no longer run Versify.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry, I didn't know
ran,
that.
yeah, I ran it for 3 years, and
Mhm.
uh, and then HarperCollins bought Houghton Mifflin, which owned the imprint. Um, and so I decided to focus on some other things. But To your question, I don't stop to think about it because if I did, I'd probably go a little crazy because it's a lot. And there are times where I get overwhelmed and I say, you just got a lot going on. You got a lot of eyewear, you traveling around the world, you working on these books, you got a high school junior. Like there are times where it's overwhelming and I just have to stop and cut some stuff out. And I went through that process this past summer where I had to cut out a significant amount of projects. Because as I get older and, you know, smarter, I realize that I've been doing this for 34 years.
It's awesome.
And the goal is not to do more. The goal is to do less and try to enjoy some of this, right?
Hmm.
So that's where I am right now. I'm at a point now where I'm really just prioritizing and trying to focus on the the things that really make me passionate and really try to enjoy this life that I've created for myself. So that's the goal now.
Love that. Can you tell me about Big C Entertainment?
Yeah. So that started, Big C Entertainment started with the crossover TV show on Disney Plus, and that was an opportunity to, produce an adaptation of the book. And I remember Disney not thinking that I could be the head writer on the show because I'd never written for television. And I was really adamant, no, I need to be the head writer. And I knew I did because I it wasn't a money grab. It was really I'm a control freak. And I also don't want my stuff changed in a way that I'm not gonna be proud of. So they finally agreed to pair me with a writer who had written for TV. And so I was a co-head writer with a gentleman by the name of Damani Johnson, and we wrote the show, and we shot it in New Orleans, and it was an incredible experience, and we won an Emmy award. Um, and so that sort of let me know and showed me that I want to dip my feet in the waters of Hollywood. I don't need to be ensconced out there, but I want to do some different projects. And so Big C Entertainment is the umbrella under which I sort of, write and produce um, digital television, film. And so that the next and theater. And so the next projects that we're working on is an animated series based on one of my children's books for PBS, which launches May 1st, called Acoustic Rooster's Barnyard Band, and then a Broadway musical based on the crossover.
Awesome.
Yeah,
And you're
it's a
doing
blessing.
a reality show too, right? The America's.
Yeah. We've been developing that for about 2 or 3 years. It's yeah. So um, yeah, that's a part of it as well.
Do you know when that one will be done, or are you still figuring things
We're
out and getting
we're we're sort of in the final negotiations,
Mhm.
and so uh, and so I think probably at some point in the first or second quarter of next year, we'll know whether it's going to be a thing and where it's going to live.
That's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
What do you like better? The production and being in the background of entertainment and creativity, or being in the foreground and writing yourself?
Well, after having spent 20 minutes or so with me, can you tell whether I like being in the back or the foreground? Yeah, I exist very well in both places. Um, Again, I love doing the work, putting in the work, and I love engaging. I love being like my mom when I was little. The way she would punish me would be to send me to my room. That was my punishment because she knew how much I wanted to be around people. Oh, that was the worst punishment ever. So yeah, I do um, like the producing and the organizing, and I also like the creating and the writing and the
Love
performing.
that. Love that.
Yeah.
How do you hook readers on the first page of a novel?
Aside from the fact that I'm a genius,
Yes.
I mean, how do you do it? Here's the thing. When I write, first and foremost, I gotta love it. I gotta be hooked on it. If I'm not like, oh snap, oh yeah, if I'm not laughing and feeling it or crying, if I'm not emotionally involved, then the chances of y'all, the reader, being, are lessened. So that's how I do it. What I try to write stuff that I'm gonna love and that I would have loved when I was younger. Simple as that.
What advice would you give to aspiring authors?
Um, read as much as possible, write something every day. And I think the biggest thing is, you know, uh, you gotta have the stomach for this thing. You're gonna be punched. You're gonna be knocked down. Can you get up? Can you keep getting up? Because the no's are coming. And so, and I know I've had them and they still come. But can you remind yourself that the yes is waiting to get through? You've just got to wait and work.
What advice would you give poets?
Write a children's picture book. A children's picture book is one poem,
Mhm.
and you'll make more money than you make on any poetry book that you publish for adults. Write a children's picture book. I tell poets that all the time.
Mhm.
Yep. I don't believe in being a starving artist. I know a lot of poets feel like that Robert Frost quote, there is no poetry in money, and there's no money in poetry. I disagree. I think it's just the way you approach it, and you don't have to be a starving artist. You can make a living from your art.
Is there anything you think you would have done differently if you could?
Mm. What I have done differently? That's a good question. There are little things, interactions with people, or a poem that I wish I would have written differently, or a different decision I may have made in a story that I would have loved to have done differently. Yeah, but I don't regret any of it. It all got me to this point, so I'm pretty grateful and blessed.
You do writing retreats and stuff too.
Hmm.
What do you cover in your writing retreats? What are some of the things that go into those?
When I was trying to figure out how to be inspired and trying to get myself excited and pumped up, I loved surrounding myself with other writers and breaking bread and laughing and sharing work. And it propelled me forward. And so whenever I do writing retreats, it's to try to do that not only for other writers, but still for me. Like, just, I still need that and want that. So imagine it's like a family reunion or a cookout or a Sunday dinner. It's You want to have that feeling of being informed, engaged, inspired, empowered, and just feel good about yourself and what you're doing and who you are.
Best piece of writing advice you've ever gotten?
Oh, when I was taking Nikki Giovanni's class at Virginia Tech, and she had given me another C on a grade, and I went to talk to her about it because I didn't understand. I thought I was an amazing writer. And I remember she said to me, she said, Kwame, I can teach you how to write, but I can't teach you how to be interesting. I was like, whoa. And so that is always stuck with. I ain't like it at the time. I was real mad, but it's always stuck with me that this notion that if we want you to be interested in what we're saying, then we got to be interesting in how we're saying it and what we're talking about. And so I find that it's important if you want to be interesting, You have to be interested. And so I try to walk through life being interested.
Love that. Love that. What's harder, writing for children or for young adults?
Oh, they're the same. I mean, they're all difficult and easy and fun and harrowing. Yeah, it's all the same. It depends on the mood. Like today, I was working on a children's picture book, and it's maybe 150 words. It's a board book. I've been working on it for 4 days, for like 15 hours. It's just 150 words, but like every word matters, and and you got to get the rhythm right, and so it's all got its challenges, but it's I love it, you know, I love it.
What's the formula for a good picture book?
The formula. Hmm. I don't know what the formula is, but I do know here's what I think about when I'm writing children's picture books. I may be writing a book about kid-friendly stuff, but I'm writing for everybody. So you got to be able to enjoy it as much as your 6-year-old kid does. Like that's important to me. And so that goes back to what I was saying before. When I'm writing a book, I gotta love it. I can't write I can't write a book that I'm not gonna enjoy reading over and over. And so for me, it's about that sort of intergenerational. In TV, we call it co-viewing. Like everybody has to be able to enjoy it. That's how I approach every picture book I write.
That's challenging.
It is, but again, it's like writing for me now and writing for the kid in me.
Hmm.
So it's challenging, but it's also fun to tap into that.
Very true, very true. Hardest page to write, the first or the last?
The first, oh my gosh, the first, and staring at that blank page is hell. The last page is the saddest because it's over, but definitely the first page is the hardest.
How do you avoid the soggy middle?
I don't even know what that is. What's that?
A lot of writers say that when they get in the middle of the book that, sometimes it's bloated or sometimes they get lost and they have to try to refine it. And, I don't know. It's just a term they throw out there. I don't know if it really even has a
Mm.
meaning or if they just say it.
Yeah, yeah, for me, the beginning is just so hard, but once I'm in it, yeah, I'm good. It's downhill. Once I'm in
That's
it,
what's
like
up.
it's like I'm uphill for days, for weeks, for sometimes years. But once I reach the top, I'm good.
That's what's up. Writing a novel in verse is hard though. That's a beautiful skill set to have. I've tried. I can't.
Oh, you can't? I can teach you how to do it. You can do it.
You should.
Yeah, you can do it. It's hard as anything else, but once you sort of figure out, like the first time I tried to write it, the crossover, it took me 5 years to
Mhm.
figure it out. But I just read a lot of novels in verse. That was the first thing I did. I read a lot. And again, I was familiar with poetry because I had written that.
Mhm.
So, but yeah.
I started with poetry. So I've written poetry, but yeah, but just long form with poetry, I struggle.
Mm, mm.
What's up next for you? What are you working on now?
I'm writing book 3 of the trilogy,
Mhm.
and so I've been thinking through that. So I'm gonna start working on that in December. But before then, I'm writing a screenplay. So I've got a movie to write um, about an all girls basketball team.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What do you like better, the screenplays or long form or children's books? Or like, you know what I mean, like the picture books.
Mhm. I think probably the screenplays are harder for me because I haven't done it as much. So I like it, but it's definitely, it's more challenging.
Awesome. You said that your agent is now your business partner.
Hmm.
How's that been so far?
That's been great. Yeah. We know it's been 10 years, so we just know each other intimately, and we trust each other, you know. And she's way smarter in a lot of areas than I am, so it just works. It works.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Any advice for debut novelists like myself who don't know what they're doing?
When is your novel coming out?
2026.
What's the name of it?
Heart's Gambit.
Heart's
It's
Gambit.
like
Great
black.
title.
It's fantasy, black time traveling
Ooh,
people.
love it. Love it. Who's publishing it?
It's gonna be at Wednesday Books.
Wednesday Books. Word. My advice: don't expect your publisher to do any marketing. Have a plan. Have a
Okay.
plan and implement it yourself. Do not wait on them, because publishers genuinely and generally do not have the capacity to implement marketing strategies for all the authors that they publish when there's only one or two people in the marketing department. The math, it doesn't math. So do not rely and expect them. Have a plan and make it happen yourself.
That wraps up today's Craft Chat Chronicles with J.D.Myall. Thanks for joining us. If you liked the episode, please comment, subscribe, and share. For show notes, writing workshops, and tips, head to jdmyall.com. That's jdmyall.com.
I appreciate you.
While you're there, join JD's mailing list for updates, giveaways, and more.